من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي الحمد لله رب العالمين ثم الصلاة والسلام على سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين واللعنة على أعدائهم أجمعين من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. Amma ba'd. Respected elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillah for the barakat of this Tuesday night that we have the opportunity to sit again and discuss the affairs of the Ahlul Bayt. Our discussion in this month of Rajab has been around our seventh Imam, Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far al-Kadhim alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And we've been discussing his biography. The life and times of our seventh Imam, which incorporated about 34 years of Imamate, are very full of information and very detailed and thorough about many of the happenings that were going on. A lot of this has to do with the political tumultuous change that was happening and the control that was being exerted by the Banu Abbas in this time period as they were establishing their kingdom, that it allowed for some freedoms and it allowed for some excessive persecution. Freedoms in the sense that while the central government was weak, there was opportunities, for example, that Imam Sadiq exploited in being able to teach the religion of Islam. And there were a lot of hardships as well, too, that as they realized the greatest threat to them was from the children of Bibi Fatima, that their persecution then was excessive as well, too. To try to encompass in short discussions the entirety of the life of Imam al-Kadhim is next to impossible. But I wanted to mention a few affairs. One, about the companions of Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far. During the dawr of Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far, Imam al-Kadhim, there are some companions who stood out exceptionally for the work that they did in the service of Islam, and others that were sources of difficulty and problems as well, too, with leaning towards the different sects that erupted during this period of time. With regards to a few of the companions that are worth mentioning who have made such a great influence upon the religion of Islam and have been sources of guidance for us through the efforts of Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim, we'll mention a few of them. One being, for example, Ali ibn Yaqtin. Ali ibn Yaqtin and his father Yaqtin were pious lovers of Ahlul Bayt. And Yaqtin was someone who was persecuted by the Banu Umayyah and had to run away from the Banu Umayyah and hide. And he ran from the areas of Kufa and he went to the city of Medina to hide in Medina. After the fall of Banu Umayyah, the Banu Abbas actually favored Yaqtin and gave him importance, to the extent where eventually in the dawr of Mahdi al-Abbasi and Harun, Ali ibn Yaqtin became the leader of the government to the extent of being the prime minister. And it was that Harun was pursuing Ali ibn Yaqtin because he said, hey, listen, you and your family were persecuted by the Banu Umayyah. You see them as horrible and evil as we do. You are our supporters and our friends. Stay with us. And Ali ibn Yaqtin, knowing Harun and the evil work of Harun and knowing the evil work of the Banu Abbas, didn't want to participate with them. But it was rather Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far who pushed Ali ibn Yaqtin to accept the position of prime minister, to lead the government of the Banu Abbas, and to be an assistant to the Shia and the followers. And Ali ibn Yaqtin many times tried to say, I don't want this job, I want out. And Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far would say, no, you have to keep this job. To the extent where Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far made him an arrangement and he said, oh Ali, give me one thing, I will guarantee you three things. He said, oh Ali, as long as you work for this government, always take care of the Shia and offer assistance to the lovers of Ahlul Bayt. And in return, I will guarantee you that you will not go to prison. I guarantee that you will not be killed. And I guarantee that you will have a place in Jannah. And Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far used to talk about Ali ibn Yaqtin in such a way that he said to some of the companions sitting with him, if you ever want to see someone who is a companion of Rasulullah, who is someone who is truly with Rasulullah, look at that person over there. And he would point to Ali ibn Yaqtin, that Ali's status was that great. There is a variety of different things in which we saw that Imam protected Ali, and Ali in turn served the religion of Islam. How there's the example of, for example, when Harun gave a lot of gifts to Ali ibn Yaqtin, Ali's habit was to send everything to Imam Musa ibn Ja'far. His opinion was Harun has come upon wealth illegitimately. The true owner of wealth is Imam al-Kadhim. So if I get any wealth from Harun, I should give it to the legitimate source so that the legitimate source of wealth and authority can give it to the people that deserve it. It happens that at one point in time, Harun gives a lot of wealth and a very special jubba, very special cloak to Ali ibn Yaqtin. And one of the enemies of the Ahlul Bayt comes to Harun and says, this Ali is your enemy. He's a follower of Ahlul Bayt and he's misleading you and you're a fool for giving him all this authority. And he says, go ask Ali about the jubba, the very special cloak that you gave him, and you'll find out that he gave it to Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim. So when Ali had sent all the gifts to Imam al-Kadhim had sent this cloak back to him and said, keep this very secure and protected near you. So now when Harun calls Ali and brings him to the court and says, I have heard a complaint against you that you are a follower of Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim, you don't really believe in my government, you're my enemy. Ali says, I'm not your enemy. I'm here, I'm working for you, I'm doing everything you ask me to. So Harun says, I gave you a very special cloak, I gave you a very special jubba, where is it? Ali says, I have it. Harun says, produce it for me. So Ali sends one of his servants to the house to bring a sealed special container into the court of Harun. And he sends the container to Harun, and Harun opens it and sees in a great state of sealed respect, dignity, authority, that this is present there. And Ali ibn Yaqtin says, Harun, I open this every day, I look at it, I kiss it, and I put it back, and I keep it because you gave it to me. It was because Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim had instructed him to be careful with this, that Ali was doing this action. And here the result and the benefit was found, that Harun believed that Ali was a true supporter of the government, not one of the followers of Imam al-Kadhim. And Ali's life was preserved and his ability to serve the Shia was preserved. The man who brought the claim against Ali ibn Yaqtin for his lying to the Khalifa, he was commanded 1,000 lashes. And after bearing 500 lashes, he died. And that was the end of him. Another famous story is, again, when people came and complained, and many people complained that Ali ibn Yaqtin is a Shia, that you should persecute him. Harun says that I wanted to find out the truth, so I hid in the rooms of Ali ibn Yaqtin. Now, what had been going on at that time is Ali ibn Yaqtin had been meeting with the Shias, and they were debating about the process of doing masa, of the feet. So Ali wrote a letter to Imam Musa ibn Ja'far, and he said, "O son of the Prophet, can you explain to us how to do masa correctly?" When Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim replied, he said, "Oh Ali, I want you to do wudu the way the Ahl Sunnah do wudu." And he explained to him, wash your face, wash your arms backwards, wash your head, wash your feet, and do wudu like this. Now, Ali ibn Yaqtin had asked about masa and was given completely different instructions on how to do wudu. But he knew the letter came from Imam al-Kadhim, so he didn't question it, and he started doing wudu like this. So sure enough, as he's doing wudu like this, Harun is hiding in his room behind a curtain, watching Ali ibn Yaqtin to see what does he do in privacy. And Harun witnesses Ali ibn Yaqtin doing wudu like the Ahl Sunnah, not like the Shia. And as soon as Ali ibn Yaqtin finishes his wudu and is about to go and pray, Harun jumps out from behind the curtain. He says, "Ali, you're one of us. I love you and you're the best," and walks out. And Ali ibn Yaqtin is surprised that he's like, the Khalifa was watching me? The Khalifa was in my room? I didn't even know. As soon as this event finishes, there's a knock on the door, and a messenger from Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim comes and gives Ali ibn Yaqtin a letter. And Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim writes, now that you're safe, this is the way to perform wudu. That first you wash your face twice, from the top to the bottom, the width of your hands. You wash your right arm from the elbow to the fingertips, your left arm from the elbow to the fingertips. Then with the remaining water, you wipe from the front part of your head, and then you wipe your right foot with your right hand and your left foot with your left hand. This hadith, by the way, is one of the authentic traditions that is used even today that talks about the technique of wudu as it was taught by Imam Musa ibn Ja'far to Ali ibn Yaqtin. And still till today, this hadith is referenced in books of fiqh to explain that the Imam is officially explaining to us how wudu should be done correctly. So Ali was that central to even the knowledge of fiqh that we possess. Ali ibn Yaqtin, as long as he served in this position as the leader of the government, he was someone who served the lovers of Ahlul Bayt. It's famously reported that they used to talk about that Ali was very charitable, Ali was very pious. Ali ibn Yaqtin was very pious and very charitable. The truth is that Harun had set a policy to persecute anyone who was Shia. And he wanted them to be poorer than poor and have nothing. Harun's Khilafah was one of the times that we saw that his opinion was, I as a Khalifa will preserve my power by persecuting, abusing, and suppressing the Ahlul Bayt and their followers. And he figured that this is the only way that I can maintain the Khilafat and it won't be taken away from me. So Harun did everything he could, not just to persecute Imam al-Kadhim, but anyone who loved Imam al-Kadhim. Meaning anyone who was ever affiliated with the Ahlul Bayt, their salaries would be cut. They wouldn't be allowed jobs and opportunities. They wouldn't be allowed education. They were intended to be the poorest and the worst of society so as to kill them off. But what Ali ibn Yaqtin did was, he became charitable in his own way. He would try and give wealth to them and take care of them, which is why it was noted that Ali ibn Yaqtin, on average, every year, would send 100+ people to do Hajj for him on his behalf. It was narrated and said that one year, one of these people narrated, and he said, I saw 150 people in the Maidan of Arafat in the days of Hajj doing niyabat of Ali ibn Yaqtin in the Talbiyah. So what was Ali ibn Yaqtin doing? He said, I have access to wealth. The Shias are not allowed wealth. I'll give them niyabat to do Hajj on my behalf, and this way it'll spread wealth to them. He was responsible for giving wealth to many of the Shias and preserving them as long as he could with all of the wealth that he had by doing different charitable acts, by showing his piety, by having lots of people perform Hajj on his behalf for him at one point in time. He was even responsible for arranging and taking care of the marriages of the children of Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim. But he hated the position he was in and would constantly ask Imam al-Kadhim to forgive him from this role and set him free, set him free, set him free, make him not work for the government. But Imam al-Kadhim would keep insisting, no, Ali, you have to stay in your role. And Ali ibn Yaqtin served in this role until when Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far was in the prison of Harun al-Rashid, that Ali ibn Yaqtin died and passed away. And that was the end of his role. There were others as well, too, who were very pious and took knowledge and learning from Imam al-Kadhim. For example, Hisham ibn Hakam. Hisham ibn Hakam is one of the famous figures in the history and the textbooks of Islam, that we have many narrations from him, many sources of knowledge that he took from Imam Sadiq, Imam al-Kadhim, and he presented to us and shared with us. Some of them are very famous, especially in the fact that he was a very famous theologian, meaning he focused on the concept of understanding usul ad-din, tawheed, adl, nabuwat, imamat, ma'ad, and he would debate on these issues and present factual proofs about them in such a way that no one could compete with him. Hisham, in one of his very, very famous debates, sees a person by the name of Amr ibn Ubayd. Amr ibn Ubayd is someone who is against the position of the Ahlul Bayt and against the position of Imamat entirely. Hisham was asked about this debate by Imam al-Kadhim himself, that Hisham once went to sit with Imam al-Kadhim, and Imam al-Kadhim says, Hisham, tell me about your debate with Amr. Hisham says, Yabna Rasulullah, what am I going to tell you? There's nothing to talk about. Imam says, no, I want you to tell me, what did you say to him? And when Hisham now narrates the conversation, this becomes a piece of our history and it becomes a narration that's saved with us. Hisham begins and he says, I found Amr ibn Ubayd in Basra inside of a masjid, talking about and saying that how it's impossible for the Prophet to have left someone in charge, and it wasn't the role of the Prophet to appoint this individual. So Hisham enters into the room and says, oh man, I have a question for you. Hisham was a young man at this point in time. Amr says, who are you, boy? What do you want from me? He says, I have a question. You have to answer my question. Amr, looking at this young man, says, okay, go ahead and ask me. Hisham says, what do your eyes do? Amr says, what do you mean, what do my eyes do? Of course. He says, answer me, what do your eyes do? They see. What do your ears do? They hear. What does your tongue do? It speaks. What do your hands do? They touch things, they feel things. What do your legs do? They are used for walking and from going from place to place. And then Hisham says, what does your heart do? He says, my heart is the place which gives me the realization of what's good and what's bad. Hisham then says, does your heart act independently of your body, or does your body act independently of your heart? He says, no, the two are connected. and that my heart guides my limbs, and when my limbs are in doubt, they return back to my heart for guidance. Hisham says, on that note, Amr, how can it be that Allah gives society a religion and then doesn't give it a source of guidance to know right from wrong and a place to revert back to for assistance when they're in need? By your own logic, if the human body needs guidance for movement, then how could it be that the religion of Allah didn't need guidance after the time of Rasulullah? And Imam al-Kadhim was very pleased by this. And Imam al-Kadhim appreciated the reply of Hisham, and therefore Hisham was someone who was noted in history for us. There's another example, for example, Yahya ibn Abdul Rahman, Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman. Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman is a personality who was from the close companions of Imam Rada, was a close companion from amongst the companions of Imam al-Jawad as well too. And this Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman was actually a servant of Ali ibn Yaqtin. So when Ali ibn Yaqtin was in charge of the government, Yunus was his servant and would work for him. And after the passing of Ali ibn Yaqtin, Yunus became one of the pious scholars and guides of the community who was trained under the hands of Imam al-Kadhim and eventually became the support of Imam Rada and became the support of Imam al-Jawad. One of the famous events that takes place is Muhammad ibn Abi Umair. Muhammad ibn Abi Umair is one of, again, the great pious companions of Imam al-Kadhim. Muhammad ibn Abi Umair was one of the narrators of the hadith of the Ahlul Bayt, and he was, because of his love of Ahlul Bayt, was persecuted by Harun. And it's famously noticed that Harun took him and threw him in prison for 17 years. And during those 17 years, he would have Muhammad ibn Abi Umair taken out of prison and beat, whipped, so that Muhammad ibn Abi Umair, because he was such a well-known Shia, would disclose who are the other Shias that are hiding amongst the general population. Muhammad ibn Abi Umair, who's one of the pious men who suffered a lot for the sake of the Ahlul Bayt, who's one of the narrators of hadith for us, says, when I was being whipped, and beat, he says, I almost gave up. He says, I almost gave up. I almost came to the point where I was going to tell Harun everything. But in that moment of weakness, I remembered the words of Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman that, oh Muhammad, don't forget the great and lofty position Allah has given you for the love of Ahlul Bayt. Muhammad ibn Umar says, the words of Yunus ibn Abdul Rahman gave me the strength to persist through the abuse, to persist through the punishments that I was being given. And I survived that instance, and I came back to the path, and I assisted the path of Ahlul Bayt. These are just some of the companions that we mentioned that the time of Imam al-Kadhim, these were some of the luminaries, some of the great assistants who ensured that both the preservation of the religion, the service of the religion, and the guidance of humanity. In the same way, one of the other group of people that are notable in the lifetime of Imam al-Kadhim are his children. On the one side, we talk about his companions and how great they were. Imam al-Kadhim, of all the Imams, had the most children, which in some narrations are 37, and in other narrations are even over 40, or close to 40 children that Imam al-Kadhim had in his life. Now, amongst the children of Imam al-Kadhim, there are some very notable personalities, and there's some important points to notice. One of the personalities that we don't talk about very often is called Ahmad ibn Musa. Ahmad ibn Musa ibn Ja'far was one of the sons of Imam al-Kadhim, who Imam al-Kadhim loved, and he was a very pious man. And he served the cause of Ahlul Bayt. He was a supporter of Imam al-Rada. He was a supporter of his brother Imam Rada, and he was someone who guided people to the right path. It's narrated that this pious son was loved by Imam Kadhim, was given wealth by Imam al-Kadhim, was always present with Imam al-Kadhim, and that Imam al-Kadhim had even put Shias and servants around who would follow him and serve him because of the good character that he possessed. His mother was known as Ahmad, and he had two other brothers, but because of his piety, his mother was known as Ahmad, and she was the one who actually held the tabarrukat of Imamat that eventually gave the tabarrukat to Imam Rada. So meaning that him and his mother both were very pious people. Ahmad famously, after the shahadat of Imam Rada, raised an army to go rise up against Harun, and with this army that was rising up for the murder of Imam Rada, was killed in Shiraz in Iran today, contemporary Iran. And there his grave was made, and it's a place that people still go to seek the wasila of the son of Imam al-Kadhim. His grave today is a place known as Shah Charagh, the King of Light, and that people go to his grave to visit and to seek the blessings of the children of Imam Kadhim and to seek closeness to Allah by this grave because of his great character. There's also, for example, Qasim, who was one of the sons of Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim, and Qasim was one of the most pious people of his time. And he was he was one of the youngest sons of Imam al-Kadhim at the time of his death, and he was someone who was seen for his piety, and Imam al-Kadhim loved him for his piety. It's narrated that this young man was someone who his piety, his obedience to Allah, his good nature, his akhlaq, his character, loved by Imam al-Kadhim. After Imam al-Kadhim, he was persecuted. He ran in fear from the government and had to hide his personality from the government of Harun. And eventually he died in a place near Hilla, which today still is known as a place of goodness, and Bayt al-Tayyiba, or Makan al-Tayyib, a good place where people still go to seek the wasila of the Ahlul Bayt to attain proximity to Allah. He was a very pious young man. From amongst the daughters, there's Bibi Fatima bint Imam al-Musa, who's also known as Masoomeen, who was one of the great and pious ladies of Islam, who along with her sisters were the narrators of hadith of Ahlul Bayt and teachings of the khutbah of Fadak to the rest of society and humanity. And that we know of her passing in the city of Qom as she was on the way to try and reach Imam Rada, who was in the city of Khurasan, and her piety. But it's important to note, not all of the children of the Imam were amongst the most pious of people. One who was known as Zayd ibn Musa, Zayd is known as Zayd an-Nar, Zayd of the fire. What's famously narrated is that Zayd raised an uprising against the Banu Abbas, and in some narrations, either in the city of Basra or in the city of Medina, he started an uprising during the time of Harun. And when he started the uprising, he went and he lit fire to the houses of Banu Abbas in the city where he started his uprising. Now, sure enough, the uprising was quelled. Zayd was captured and brought to Harun. And the exchange between these two is famous. Harun, when he captures Zayd and Zayd is brought in chains in front of the Khalifa says, Zayd, you began burning our houses, your cousins. Why didn't you burn the houses of our enemies, the Banu Umayyah who lived in the city? Instead, you attacked us, your brothers? Zayd smiles and says, you're right. I made a mistake. The next uprising, I'll burn their houses before I burn yours. Harun laughed this off, but this became a very famous exchange between the two of them. And Harun, in attempting to show leniency, Ma'mun, actually intending to show leniency, sent Zayd to his brother Imam Rada, because Ma'mun had made Imam Rada the Naib Khalifa, so the successor to the Khalifa. So Ma'mun, in being nice, sent Zayd to his brother Imam Rada, and Imam Rada then kept Zayd with him for a period of time. In Uyun al-Akhbar al-Rada, there's a famous exchange between Imam Rada and his brother Zayd. It's said that Imam Rada was sitting in a meeting and talking to people, and in the same room, Zayd was sitting with some other people socializing. And Imam Rada, in the middle of his meeting, heard the words of Zayd saying that we are the people that are not burned by fire. We are the special ones. Imam Rada immediately stood up from his meeting and went over to his brother. And he says, oh, Zayd, this reference that you're making that we will not be burned by fire is exclusively for the sons of Bibi Fatima, Imam Hassan and Imam Hussain, and their pious children who follow the religion directly, like our father, Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far. And he explains to Zayd, and he says, this is for those who obey the religion and enact the rules of the religion correctly. You mean to tell me that you think you are the same as our father who used to worship Allah in day and night and act in piety, and you want the same status as him in Akhirah? That you shouldn't be punished like this? And then Imam Rada said something very famous. He says, the children of the Ahlul Bayt are those when they do good, the reward they receive is twice. And when they do evil, the punishment they receive is twice. That don't imagine that your being attached to the Ahlul Bayt is sufficient to protect you from all of the challenges and difficulties that exist. Rather, it increases the severity of the responsibility you have upon you. And should you refuse to reflect it correctly, you'll be punished for that action. After this, it said that Imam Rada never spoke to his brother Zayd again and sent his brother away and said, don't speak to me again. I don't want to talk to you. Now, the significance of mentioning this is that when we look at, for example, the children of the Ahlul Bayt, We think of them that they're coming from the Imam, they're perfect, that they must have every attribute present because their father is an Imam. How could it be that they don't? But that even a child of the Imam, the same way the child of the Anbiya, can have a flaw and a mistake in them, like the son of Nabi Nuh. The explanation of this, for example, comes from one of the statements of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that when Imam Ali sends his son Muhammad Hanafiya into battle and says, go attack the army, there's a volley of arrows coming in, and Muhammad Hanafiya doesn't move. He just stands there. Imam Ali comes back to him and he says, hey, I commanded you to go attack. Why didn't you? Muhammad Hanafiya says, Father, they were shooting arrows, so I figured I'll wait. When they finish shooting their arrows, when they're done shooting arrows, then I'll go and attack. Imam Ali takes the flag from him and gives it to someone else and says to Muhammad Hanafiya, this weakness of your character comes from the side of your mother. Which is why the example of Muhammad Hanafiya is directly in comparison to the example of Hazrat Abbas. Hazrat Abbas is the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. When he's in Karbala, the volleys upon volleys of arrows could not have stopped Hazrat Abbas from fulfilling the command that was given to him by his Imam. So meaning that even in the children of the Ahlul Bayt, there are differences. And Imam Ali is explaining that sometimes when you see these flaws in character in the children of the Ahlul Bayt, it comes from the fact that the genealogy is mixed and that it comes from the side of the other side of the family. Which is why Rasulullah gave us instruction, that be very careful in the family that you choose to marry, because certainly the genealogy will play an effect in the child that's born to you. So this entire description talks about and says that the children of Imam Kadhim, while they are luminaries, many of them in great examples, even in them there were some flaws and mistakes, that they weren't perfect examples in every situation as well. And therefore, for us, it's not sufficient that someone says, I possess excellent genealogy, but rather one should research and learn what is the true character of a person. Finally, the Dawr of Harun was a very difficult time period upon the Ahlul Bayt and the followers of Ahlul Bayt. Harun was a jealous personality, who was someone who was weak in character, that he always wanted the focus to be upon him, and he hated the fact that anyone else should be praised or appreciated instead of himself. And which is why he always looked for reasons to persecute Imam al-Kadhim. And one of the sources where this came from was when Harun went to the ziyarat of his grandfather. He went to the ziyarat of the Holy Prophet and he said, Assalamu alayka ya ibn Am. I send my salam to you, Ya Rasulullah, O son of my cousin, O son of my uncle. Showing that he was the son of Hazrat Abbas and Rasulullah was the son of Hazrat Abdullah. And Abdullah and Abbas were brothers. And Harun was showing his close relationship to the Holy Prophet. When Imam al-Kadhim came and Assalamu alayka ya abata. And Imam al-Kadhim came and he said, oh, salam to you, my father. And Harun was like, shh, cousin, come on, what's the difference between us? We're the same. And Imam al-Kadhim explained that, no, we have closer proximity to Rasulullah than you do. Harun didn't like this, but he couldn't find a reason to persecute and to imprison Imam al-Kadhim, and therefore he looked for someone who would give him the reason. Eventually, it's narrated and said that Harun found one of the cousins of Imam al-Kadhim, one of the nephews of Imam al-Kadhim, and bribed him. Ali ibn Ismail ibn Ja'far. Ismail was the brother of Imam Moosa-e-Kadhim. Ismail's son, Ali, was someone of weak character and someone who had jealousy towards Imam al-Kadhim. And Harun sent a messenger to say that, Ali, if you testify against your uncle, I'll give you great wealth. So Ali decided he'll take the great wealth. He wanted to go to the city of Baghdad. And when he was going, Imam al-Kadhim called him and said, come to me, Ali, where are you going? Because he was his nephew. Ali says, I have to go to Baghdad for some business. Imam al-Kadhim says, don't go there. We'll give you business here. Ali said, no, I have a lot of debts. I have a lot of responsibilities. Imam al-Kadhim says, I'll fulfill your responsibilities. Stay here. Don't go to Baghdad. Ali says, no, I'm going. Imam al-Kadhim sent the equivalent of a great amount of wealth, over 3,000 dirhams of silver and some other property and some wealth to the house of Ali. And as he sent it to his nephew's house, he says, I swear this Ali will be responsible for the spilling of my blood. The companions heard this and they said, Imam al-Kadhim, Ali is going to be responsible for the spilling of your blood. Then why are you sending him gifts and presents? Imam al-Kadhim replied, because Allah wants to see these relationships maintained. He is cutting the relationship with me. I want to bear witness on the Day of Judgment that in spite of him trying to cut relations with me, I tried to keep relations with him. This explanation from Imam al-Kadhim is one of the examples, one of the many examples of the Ahlul Bayt, where they're demonstrating and showing how important family relation is. If someone is cutting with you or is trying to harm you, you still try to keep relationships. It's not sufficient to say, well, he wants to break relationship with me, then I don't need to keep relationship with him. Imam al-Kadhim's action of sending this one who will be responsible for the spilling of his blood, wealth, even in that situation, Imam al-Kadhim is showing that even though he's my enemy, I have a blood relation with him, I'm going to keep the blood relation even if he's trying to cut it. Ali ibn Ismail goes into the court of Harun in front of all the judge and jury that are present there, and he begins to narrate and say that I've seen Imam al-Kadhim buy a piece of property for 30,000 dinars of gold, and that he amasses people in his support to stand against Harun the Khalifa. Harun turns to his court and he says, now I have reason to imprison Moosa ibn Ja'far. And so begins the imprisonment and the difficulties and the trials that befell Imam Moosa ibn Ja'far, that eventually in this prison, when Imam Kadhim entered the prison, they said we would hear the dua of Imam al-Kadhim, where he would say, oh Allah, I wanted time without disturbances to worship you. Thank you for the blessing of giving me this time where I can worship you without any hindrance. But they abused Imam al-Kadhim so much that he eventually started calling out that, oh Allah, these difficulties have overcome me. I don't want to continue this path anymore. Set me free from these difficulties. Which eventually led to the shahadat of Imam al-Kadhim after 34 years of his imamah. His shahadat is something that is very poignant, is very painful, and is very difficult for the troubles and the tribulations that he went through. And in this month, the 25th of Rajab, we commemorate the shahadat of Imam al-Kadhim. And if you have the opportunity, go take a look and see in Baghdad and Kadhimain, how do they commemorate the shahadat of Imam al-Kadhim, how they bring the tabut as if the body of the Imam was coming to the place of his grave in Baghdad. And that's a reflection of how the people brought the actual tabut and the body of Imam al-Kadhim to the grave in Baghdad so many years ago. Inshallah, next week we'll continue by the discussion of the life of our eighth Imam, Imam al-Rida, and we end our discussion with dua. Nad'uka bismika al-azim al-a'zam al-a'azz al-ajall al-akram. We call out 10 times, Ya Allah, Ya Allah, Ya Allah. Ya Allah, 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 Ya Mahmud bihaqqi Muhammad, Ya A'la bihaqqi Ali, Ya Fatir al-samawat bihaqqi Fatima, Ya Muhsin bihaqqi al-Hasan, Ya Qadim al-Ahsan bihaqqi al-Hussain. Oh Allah, accept a small ibadat from us. Oh Allah, give the thawab of this majlis to our marhumeen, the marhumeen of our community, and the marhumeen who have no one to pray for them. Ya Allah, forgive our sins and cover our flaws. Fulfill our hajat by the wasila of Ahlul Bayt, and keep us on the path of the Ahlul Bayt. Oh Allah, those amongst us who are sick, give them shifa'ah by the mention of the Ahlul Bayt. Oh Allah, those who are in security and in difficulty, give aman to the believers wherever they are by the mention of Ahlul Bayt. Keep our children on the upright path of Ali Muhammad. Hasten the reappearance of Sahib al-Zaman. Make us and our families from the upright supporters of Sahib al-Zaman. And finally, make sure that, Ya Allah, give us tawfiq of ziyarat of Ahlul Bayt in this world and shifa'ah of Ahlul Bayt in the hereafter. Remembering all of our marhumeen on this night, 1 Surah Fatiha, 3 times Surah Ikhlas, لأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك